Okay, here is the schedule for today's session. First, a short presentation of the teaching project, then the didactical concept, course plan, schedule, and finally questions and discussion. So the first point of our presentation, it's a teaching project and a cooperation between LMU Munich and ETH Zurich. It's funded by eLearning at IND, which is a new project to bring together both new media and famous universities. And this seminar aims to develop international interdisciplinary perspectives on artificial intelligence. It also aims to integrate and combine online teaching technologies such as blogs, apps, wikis, online quizzes, live streams, and even YouTube channels. So you see there's a bulk of new media integrated into this seminar, and it's also in a way an experiment, and we will see whether it works or not. I hope it will work, and I'm quite optimistic. So let's go on to the didactical concept. As you have already seen, there's a seminar webpage, ai-perspectives.net. Have a look at it. I think it's interesting. There is a blog. There's also a wiki. There are some quizzes. We will, in the course of this seminar, we will upload new quizzes so that you can always test your knowledge and your understanding. These quizzes will also be available for apps. I will tell you something more about this now. So there's an own app for this seminar, which is for Android and Apple smartphones. It's called Philocast app. Here is the picture from the Android store, and here is the picture from the Apple store. It's for free, so you can download it if you want, and you will find also other contents in this app. There are quizzes. As you can see, this Q indicates that there's a quiz that you can take on the fly, so to speak. So just check it out, try it. All Zoom sessions will be recorded as this here, but not the discussions. So privacy is very important for us. Furthermore, the sessions will be made available on the YouTube channel Philocast, which has more than 4,000 subscribers by now. You can also only enter Philocast and you will find it soon. And it serves the purpose to document our input, so you can watch it later, or if you have no time for attending the seminar, it's not a problem. Let's go on to the course plan and our philosophers that we are going to discuss. And I hand over to Arno that he can tell us what's about these texts and philosophers.
So I had to unmute me, a classical mistake not to unmute yourself. So yeah, I think I don't want to directly address now the two philosophers, Turing and Searle. I take a little bit more complicated way. I mean, why do we want to discuss artificial intelligence in this seminar? And possibly it's especially for students of the ETH, possibly not so much for students of the LMU. It depends a little bit what you are studying. It's more or less immediately clear why we have to discuss artificial intelligence at a university and together between different disciplines. But I think, at least in my view, there are two different ways of justifying, let's say, why we should discuss AI at the moment, artificial intelligence. And one aspect is that for sure we can observe without any problem that in many, many fields of applications of digital technologies, that technologies, specific technologies developed in the field of AI are becoming more and more applied and are changing the ways how we use digital tools, are changing the ways how we communicate, are changing the ways how we do science, for example, are changing the ways how we interact with computers, how we drive our cars, and many, many different things. So in the more encompassing field of the digital transformation of our culture and our society, our sciences, AI plays a role which is getting more and more important. You know? So this is one aspect, the huge process of digital transformation and the specific role of technologies developed in the field of artificial intelligence. The second aspect why I think it is interesting, or why we think, I hope I can include Jörg in this respect, why we think that it makes sense to discuss artificial intelligence at the moment is because artificial intelligence research is at the moment at a specific point in its own history. Because in a way, artificial intelligence research is a field with a certain and specific complicated history, which experiences a specific interesting turn in the last 10 or 20 years, namely that a specific approach that we can call deep learning, or that we can call artificial neural networks, that this specific approach was incredibly successful and is very often the basis of many of these technologies, many of these tools that we find in our everyday practice. So within the history of artificial intelligence research, something new happened slowly, but on the broad range with a huge impact, possibly only in the last 10 or 20 years, that is of a specific interest because it's a very specific approach that we can observe in artificial intelligence research, or how it is often, very often called machine learning, or especially deep learning. So there are two contexts, the huge context, the much more encompassing context of digital transformation. And the other context is more connected to the history of artificial intelligence research and a specific new technology which proved to be very successful in the last years. Yeah? So, and the structure of the seminar, I would explain a little bit by, let's say, a working definition of artificial intelligence research. What is it? I do not exactly know, and possibly if I come up with a definition, every time someone will say, no, that's not a correct definition. It's different. Yeah? But nevertheless, I think a working definition could be something like artificial intelligence research aims at something like implementing intelligent behavior on the basis of computational processes. This is a working process, a working definition, which I would propose as a starting point. So it's implementing artificial behavior, whatever this exactly is, on the basis of computational processes. And the first question that comes with this, or comes with that this kind of working definition implies in a way, is the question, what is what is intelligent behavior? And what exactly could be a machine, a computing machine, that in a way exhibits or performs a behavior that we would call intelligent? And the first part, and you see here the dates and the two philosophers, or the two theoreticians, mathematicians, philosophers. In the case of Turing, it's quite kind of complicated what exactly he is, or he was, because he did so many interesting things. But these two texts here of Alan Turing and John Searle, in a way, can be focused on the question, what or in what way can we call machines, or in what way can we call machines intelligent, let's say? Are the machines intelligent, or is their behavior intelligent? And why do we think that this specific behavior of something could be called intelligent? So the first two texts are in a way addressing the question of how can we call something an intelligent behavior? And they are taking totally different approaches. Yeah, Turing is in a way arguing for a kind of, yeah, it's called imitation game. It's a kind of scenario where we could try to decide to give specific criteria for the decision if some behavior seems to be intelligent or not. And in a way, John Searle is directly arguing against the way how Turing tried to frame the question when a machine or a behavior that we can observe could be called intelligent. Okay, this is for me a little bit the first part. I go to the second part, which is in a way also connected to the question, what is intelligent behavior? Because, you know, what is intelligence? It's a rather open question. So possibly we used the word and it was used for a long time without any problem for sure, but what is intelligence? It's not so easy to specify exactly what kind of performances, what kind of tasks you can solve are considered to be intelligent and what aren't. No? So, and that's the point where the history of artificial intelligence research comes a little bit into play, because for a long time, artificial intelligence research, in a way, thought or shared the premise that intelligence and intelligent behavior is linked to thinking. And then thinking was very often understood as logical thinking, so that you are able to draw inferences, logical inferences, for example, or that you can play intellectual games like chess. Yeah? So a very old idea of the mind as calculating, as logical inferring, this is a very old idea of modern philosophy about what it is to think, combined here, was combined in a way in AI research with the aim, what we should construct when we try to construct a machine which could be considered to be intelligent. Yeah? So people tried, or AI researchers tried to construct machines that can logically think or that can play chess. So chess was so crucial for the history of artificial intelligence research. People tried to construct a computer that can beat in chess the best human chess player. And that was finally achieved. I think it was 1996, Deep Blue against Garry Kasparov. That was in a way a result of this style of AI research, of this approach of AI research. But at the same time, something different happened, and that is connected to deep learning. That another approach was conceived, let's say. The first beginnings were much older, but at its specific point, AI researchers were inspired by neurological research about the visual cortex of the brain. And they started to say, okay, possibly if we want to construct an intelligent machine, it shouldn't think logically primarily, or it shouldn't primarily play chess or something like that. Possibly, it's much more interesting to construct a machine which can identify objects, that can see objects, that can identify an apple and identify a peach or something like that in difference to an apple. And that was very hard for the old approach, but it seems it proved to be much more easier to achieve this kind of task with the new approach based on artificial neural networks that drew their inspiration on neurological research about the human or non-human brain. So a very different approach was conceived that is based not on the computation of logical inferences or the computational evaluation of moves in a chess game or something like that. But that was based on many, many small processors interacting in a kind of network of single processors, like the brain consists out of many, many single processors that are linked to each other, and that through the network process a signal. And that learns the way how it processes. And these different approaches are discussed by Smolensky. Dreyfus and Ensmenger address much more the classical approach that was focused on playing chess and that was focused on logical thinking. Smolensky is much more addressing the new paradigm and much more and has much more in mind things like seeing objects. So what does it mean to think can have different answers? And different answers to these questions are connected to different approaches to artificial intelligence research in the last decades. And it was a brain-inspired approach that proved very successful, and that is today sometimes used as a model for the human brain. Because in detail, we also do not understand exactly how the human brain processes signals. So sometimes the artificial networks are used to understand or are conceived as a tool, as a model for the natural process in the human brain. And one guy who is proposing this kind of understanding is Cameron Buckner, a very recent text 2 years ago. So these are the two first blocks. And the third block is in a way...
Oh, sorry, I'm just...
okay, Jörg, excuse me.
Right, these are the two first blocks, and there will, so to speak, an intermediate block, and not quite the third block. Arno will tell us something more about the third block. So there will be some sort of experiment, namely on November the 30th of 2021, there will be, so to speak, a workshop on AI in practice. There will be a presentation and discussion with the startup Util. Perhaps one of you know it. This is the logo. So what is Util? I thought it is a very interesting startup that really integrates AI in themes on equality and global justice. So this is the short description of Util. Self-description from their webpage. I will just read it. Util is a financial technology company using big data and machine learning to derive the social and environmental impact of every company and portfolio. So the objective of this startup is as follows. We evaluate a company's revenue streams and draw conclusions from 120 million peer-reviewed journals. So you have access to consistent objective analytics you can trust. We subject every listed company in the world, 45,000 of them, to the same methodology so you can compare any two and get access to the largest possible investable equity universe. And finally, we measure the positive and negative effects of every company on the 17 UN SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and thousands of sustainability themes so that you can capture the entire impact of your portfolio. So this is an interesting startup, we think, that connects AI technology to sustainable development goals, so to speak, to make the world better in a way, we will see. And there will be enough room for discussion with this startup. We have three members of this startup that will discuss our questions, and we will prepare for this workshop so that I think every one of us will learn how to really apply AI, not only in terms of science, but also in terms of economics or even politics and global justice. So this was a short intermediate section, and now I'm handing over to you, Arno, for the real third part.
Okay, thank you. I think Util is also kind of interesting break, let's say, within the course plan, because until to this point, we discuss in a way very much a kind of classical, or we presuppose a kind of classical perspective on AI until this point, that in a way we have specific machines developed in artificial intelligence research, and we have the human being. Yeah? So we assume the human being is intelligent. Let's assume this is true. And then we ask what kind of machines we could call intelligent, okay? Then we start with a specific understanding of the thinking of the human being, and we ask, okay, what would be a thinking machine in respect to different understandings of thinking? But it's every time, it's in a way, a mirroring thing between the human being and the machine. Yeah? But in fact, many applications has not so much, or are totally independent of these kind of questions, because very applications are just motivated by the engineering task that you have, or by an engineering perspective, that you have a task, a problem, and you try to construct, or you try to develop a tool that helps you to solve the task. You know? Your tool has an economical purpose and political purpose, a developmental purpose, excuse me for that. And they try to construct a tool that helps you to fulfill this purpose. You know? And they try to sell it. So they are not possible. I didn't discuss with them until now, but for them, I assume it's not the decisive question to ask in what way their tool is intelligent, or in what their tool is thinking. They're just engineering a tool that works. And this is very dominant, prevalent for many machine learning applications today. But this opens up at the same time a new perspective on what happens in artificial intelligence research and its applications. Namely, what happens when humans and machines cooperate, collaborate, interact, work together in a social practice. You know? So that's why in the third part, we ask, how do machines act, if they act, and how do they interact with human beings? Yeah? So we are a little bit changing the context of discussing AI. We are not mirroring man and machine. We are asking for, how do mans and human beings and machines interact? What is the social practice? What is the social context for a specific interaction? In what way do we have to think about the social practice of application when we try to develop a tool for a specific task? You know? So we are opening up the field in view of the practice and the context of applications and their interactions between human beings and machine in reality, in a way. And this is the rather new approach. I would say it's a kind of non-classical approach in the discussion of AI research that was opened up by two philosophers, I think, a historian of science and a philosopher, Collins and Cush, and which has also political and ethical discussions or implications with it. And that's why we discuss a text of De Sio and van den Hoven, which is addressing the question, how can we meaningfully control weapon systems that are intelligent in some way? You know? So there it's really the question how we have to design not only a machine which is intelligent, how we have to design the whole scenario of application so that we can have control on a machine. Yeah. So this is a little bit the first three parts of the lecture, and we have these of the lecture of the seminar, and we have these three parts together: the ETH students and the LMU students. Right. And this is obligatory for all students. But then, because the LMU starts later, they also have to work longer, but not necessarily also the ETH students, because There's the end of the term at the end of the year at the ETH, as in whole Switzerland. And that means if you don't want to, the ETH students, you don't have to follow the further program. This is a program obligatory for the LMU students, but not for the ETH students, who are nevertheless invited to participate if they want to.
Yeah, Arno, many thanks. You're totally right. So ETH students are invited to participate still in the fourth part, but it's not necessary because you have done what you needed to do. But the LMU students are, I really think that it's important for them to attend the fourth part. So in this part, we will mainly focus on different applications of artificial intelligence. So the first three parts will be, so to speak, basis, the conceptual basis, and the philosophical basis, and the fourth part will be the application of these concepts that we've learned so far. All these sessions will also be recorded so that the ETH students can watch it online later, so they don't need to really attend it live, so to speak. So on January the 11th of 2022, there will be the discussion on AI and aesthetics. You might have heard it, there has been an attempt to finish one of Beethoven's symphonies, his unfinished symphonies, and I've listened to it and it sounded really interesting. So we will certainly discuss this topic of AI and aesthetics, also music. There are, as you know, there are AI that that can paint and so on. So this will really be interesting task whether AI has a kind of creativity, whether it can be considered as a kind of agent, a creative agent. This is the question. So the week afterwards, we will discuss AI and autonomy and robotics. So the question will be, can AI be considered autonomous? Is it in a way a self-directing, self-referring system? And if so, does it possess a kind of autonomy, perhaps even a kind of moral autonomy? We will discuss the question of robotics and AI, which is a great deal at the moment. So in the week afterwards, we'll discuss AI and posthumanism. This is a rather philosophical discussion. So many philosophers are arguing that AI will enhance humankind in such a way so that a new kind of human being is created. I find this rather a little bit problematic, but nonetheless, we need to discuss it. It really belongs to our seminar, AI and posthumanism. So in the week of the first week of February, on February the 1st, we will finally discuss ethical problems of AI. So the question will be similarly to the discussion about AI and autonomy and robotics. First, can there be moral artificial intelligent agents? Can we speak of agents? And if so, are they to be held responsible for what they are doing if they are able to do? And on the other hand side, we will discuss the outcome of artificial intelligence. So does artificial intelligence really make our world better? We can also discuss this question with Util in this workshop, but this will be primarily ethical questions and problems that we are addressing in this session. And finally, on February the 8th, there will be a closing discussion where we can bring all our learnings together and perhaps also give a perspective on further developments. And you are also invited to bring your own perspective into this last session to discuss this topic from a really interdisciplinary perspective. So this is the course plan so far, and we would like to thank you for your attention. Arno, does you want to say something?
I would like to add a short remark before you have the possibility to ask questions. In respect to the general approach to artificial intelligence research in this seminar, Jörg and me, we share the opinion, I'm pretty much sure, that in this seminar, we primarily try to discuss, to reflect together with you, the importance, the relevance, and the impact of artificial intelligence research on our society and on classical theories and things like that. But we are primarily interested in the current state of research and application. So we are primarily interested in reflecting what happens and possibly what happens in the next years. But we are trying to avoid too utopian and too speculative questions that are very often much older than artificial intelligence research, but linked to it. So we are not focusing on Terminator-like scenarios like what will happen when the creator will be overwhelmed by the might of its creations or something like that. These are not the questions which we will try to focus, although they are around. They are very often linked to artificial intelligence research. Sometimes they are motivating researchers, possibly. But this is not the main focus of the seminar. We are really trying to be aware of what happens in the research field, of what happens in respect to the applications, to observe what happened and to think about it, to try to understand what happens in confrontation with the current state of research and applications. And I think this is a good approach, especially for this seminar, where we bring together students of different universities, students with sometimes more humanities-like background, and some students, I hope so at least, and after my view on the list of students, I have the impression some students which have a strong background in the natural sciences, in math, or in computer science, or in the engineering science. I think this is very helpful to base, in a way, the whole discussion on the current state of research and bringing together the perspectives of different disciplines. So thanks a lot for this postponement of your questions.